Hey guys. I need to close this blind behind me. Getting a little bit too much light. Okay, hopefully that's slightly better. How's it going? Welcome to the live stream. Oops, just getting set up here. See my dog hanging out here on the couch. All right, we are ready to go. Okay, so I'm just going to give you guys a couple of minutes to join, and I'm going to share this live stream over to my Facebook group for anybody in there who wants to watch along with you. So how's it going? How is it going developing your plots and your concepts? If you have questions or anything, or you want to share for feedback, put that in the comments now, or if you just want to say hi. Today we are talking about exploring the possibilities. So this is really important because, and I'll get into why in a second. Actually, I don't want to get into it yet because I see more people hopping in. So just let me give you guys a couple of seconds to join. But today is a super important topic because otherwise you end up sort of just shooting yourself in the foot on the whole story thing. And I'll explain why in a second. So welcome, like I said, if you want to say hi, do that in the comments. Or if you want to ask questions, or if you have any, if you want to share what you've been working on and just get feedback, you can definitely post that as well. All right, let's see. All right, sharing that in my Facebook group. Oops. Welcome. Hey guys, I see more people jumping on, so feel free to say hi. Let me know that you're here. Let's see. So, yeah. I'm excited to have everybody here, and hopefully over the last few days you've been just really developing the idea that you have. Hey Diane, good morning. How are you? Hey Sheila. Let's see. Now, sometimes, for some reason, all my comments don't always show up on my phone. So if for some reason you're commenting and I'm not seeing it or I'm not saying anything, it could be that it's not showing up on my phone for some reason. Facebook doesn't always show all of the comments on my phone when I'm live streaming, but it will show them on the Facebook page later, so I can always come back and, just answer your question at that point. So if for some reason I don't answer your question or I don't mention you, I'm not ignoring you, not at all. I just may not be seeing your comment, which is one of the other reasons why I pull up the live stream on my computer, because then I can see the stuff that I can't see on my phone. So, all right. Stream number 3. Okay, so I'm going to be doing live streams, like I said, every day during this challenge. So there'll be live streams happening again tomorrow and Sunday as well. And I'll be doing them still at noon. My goal is to do them at noon still. Sundays may be slightly different timing. And if for some reason I change the timing, I will let you know in the email that goes out in the morning, because I'm supposed to be doing some volunteer work on Sunday and I'm not sure what time I have to go and do that. So yeah, we'll see. Okay, hey guys. Hey Deborah. Still waking up. It's 5 a.m. here. Oh wow, that's early. Yeah, it's noon for me, Central Time. So weird because most of my life I've lived on East Coast time, and so I'm just getting used to being back on Central Time full time now, because I did live in Houston for 5 years, and so I was on Central Time for that. Before that I lived in California, so then I was on Pacific Time. But most of my years of life have been in the East Coast, so in New York, and so I was always on East Coast time, and now I'm trying to get used to this Central Time, because even though it's only been a few months, I'm still like not 100% on it, because I keep going, oh, noon Eastern, and then I'm like, wait, no, noon Eastern would only be 11 here. So yeah, I'm just trying to work out the time zones. So, all right, awesome. All right, so got a bunch of people on now. We're going to get jumping right in. Okay, so like I said, today we are going over just the idea of exploring possibilities. And the reason is because a lot of the times what happens for writers is that they get this idea and they run with it, or they get this, they come up with a plot, or they come up with what they think is their concept and they run with it, and they're not really thinking it through or really working out, is this really the best possibility for my story? And so this is, important, because otherwise you may not be giving yourself the best story possible for your reader, for yourself. So it's always a better idea to not stick with the very first thing you come up with, but to actually explore other possibilities. And yeah, maybe you come back to that first one and decide it is the best one. But I feel like the best way to know that is to start exploring what other possibilities are available to you, and then, play around with them. And then from there, you can actually figure out, okay, this is the story that's going to work. And I've got an example to sort of walk you through that. If anyone has questions about concept plot, I have been calling it premise. Premise and plot are the same thing, by the way. So if you hear me say premise, I'm talking about plot. It's the same thing. So if you have questions or anything about the stuff we've been covering so far on this challenge, put them in the comments. If you are just hopping onto this live stream and you're not part of the challenge yet, so I'm doing a 5-day free challenge right now where I'm helping you turn your idea into a story. So if you're not already in the challenge, you're not getting the emails, you can get them by going to jenniferblanchard.net/story challenge. And all of the emails will get sent to you automatically. So you'll get all of the emails 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And of course, all of the live streams are recorded. So if you can't be there live, obviously you can check out the replay after. Okay, so just finishing this, sharing this thing. Okay, cool. Let's see, there's some questions. I was wondering if you could explain a little more about your course for Nano, or are you going to do that now? Yeah, okay, so I will mention that at the end of the live stream. So I'll talk about the workshop that I'm running that is going to be all about story planning and helping you to continue the process that we're starting here, which is, developing your concept plot, and actually we're going to, like I said, I'll talk more about that at the end. Okay, so today, exploring the possibilities. So a couple of things. The first thing is that when you are writing a story, when you're coming up with your story, the thing you don't want to do, especially in the very beginning, very early developmental stages, is settle. So I think a lot of times we're so excited about the idea that we get, or we just really are ready to write something, and so we just get this blip of inspiration, or we think, oh, I've got a little bit of a plot, and then we just sit down and start writing. And what ends up happening is that we're actually settling for a story that's not as great as it could be if you actually took some time to figure it out more, to develop it more, to let it marinate more. So that's one of the reasons that we're doing Explore the Possibilities for day 3 of this challenge, because I just want you to realize that the first idea you get for your story doesn't necessarily mean that that's the story. It means that that's the first iteration of it, or it's the first idea you came up with, and now it's time to go deeper and to really ask questions. So and the example that I was going to give is the story that I wrote in 2008. So I've talked about this the other day on the live stream, but basically the story was that this girl drops everything, moves across the country to try to date her favorite musician. That was the idea that I came up with. That's the story I ran with, and I wrote it. But really, it wasn't the best story. It wasn't the best version of the story that I actually wanted to tell. And so it just didn't really work that well. When I finished the draft, I felt like, well, this is a mess. And then I tried to fix it, and I spent a year trying to rewrite it, and I rewrote it like 2 or 3 times, and it was a mess, and I couldn't fix it. So finally, I set it aside, and I decided maybe this story just needs more marination time. Now, what I mean by marination time, similar to if you marinate meat or something, is that you are going to let it sit for a little while, and you are going to actually just let it sort of soak in your subconscious. So you've got the idea and you're playing around with potential options for it, but you're not just immediately sitting down and writing it. You're giving it some space to become something better, to grow a little bit. And so that's the reason that you shouldn't just run with the first idea, is because sometimes it's just not enough, or maybe it's not what it could be. And so now when I look back at the story that I wrote in 2008, I'm so happy that I did not run with that and finish it and publish it and get it out there, because it would have been the wrong story. Because yeah, that was a good idea, but it really wasn't the best story. And so for me, the story that I'm working on now, which is basically a redo version of that story I wrote in 2008, the new version of it is completely different, but it's a million times better because it has opposition. It has an actual journey that's more than just this girl running after this musician, but it's actually bringing in these other pieces that are making it come to life in a whole new way. So now the story is that the girl gets invited to go on tour with her favorite musician. So she's basically, invited to go on this tour, and she goes on tour with him. And then, of course, there's a girl who's one of their groupies or whatever, and she doesn't want her there. So she's going to try to stop her from being there, trying to make her leave. And I'm super excited about this story because it's just really fun, and it has all the elements that I wanted from the first story, but it's a much better version, and it's written better, and the actual story came together better. And so for that reason, I'm super grateful that I did not run with that first story. When I wrote it, I recognized that it just wasn't working, that it wasn't going to work, especially after trying to redo it a few times and realizing that it really wasn't getting me anywhere, that I set it aside and I took a break from it. And I'm so glad that I did, because when I did that, I was able to not only come up with a different story, so I came up with Soundcheck, which I ended up writing and publishing in 2015, but then now I've got this reworked version of the story I wrote in 2008, and because I know so much more about craft now and story structure and all of that, it's actually a much better story. And so that's why I say don't just run with the first thing you have. Explore the possibilities, get excited about what you have going on, but then ask yourself what else could happen. And so in the email this morning, I talked about asking what if questions, which is something that I learned from my mentor, Larry Brooks. And he talks about it in his book, Story Engineering, and in all his books that he wrote on storytelling, he talks about what if questions. So the idea is you look at what you have and then you say, well, what if this? Or what if that? And you sort of start asking questions that relate to, the story, but pulling it into different directions just to see what could happen. So it's like, okay, but what if, the character had a missing eyeball? Or what if the character had a special blood type that made it super rare and caused something else to happen? Or what if, I don't know, I'm just making stuff up now. But the point is looking at what you have as your idea, your concept, your premise, and then from there asking what if questions. Now, what if is a starting point, and I like to explore more than just what if possibilities, but I think that's a great starting point question. And then once you've got your starting point, you can really start to pull it apart and say, okay, what if I did this instead? Or what if the character was this way? Or what if I changed the sex of the character? So maybe you were thinking male character and then you change it to female, and all of a sudden it brings the story to life in a whole new way. Or the opposite, maybe you had a female character and then you changed it to a male and it brought the story to life in a whole new way. So that's the reason I say don't just run with what you start with, because a lot of times there's something better just under the surface and you just have to sort of dig around a little bit to actually get to it. So like for me, with the story that I wrote in 2008, it was a good idea. Like I said, okay, she moves cross country, she's going to try to date this musician, fine. But it just kind of felt very needy and very much like this is not going to be a strong female character, because that's sort of like you're going to run after some guy, you're going to go chasing some guy. Like that wasn't really a strong character. And I wanted my characters and my lead characters to be strong, even if they're going to have to overcome stuff, of course, and become even stronger at the end. But I want them to start off that way. I don't want them to start off as these like needy little people. So it just didn't feel right to me in the story to have that happening. And so now I've got this story where it's empowering for her, because she's not running after some musician chasing him, but he actually invites her to join him on tour. So it's like, okay, she's actually being invited to go out there and to be part of this, music world with him. And it's not just, oh, she's going to chase after him and try to, date him. It could have worked. I suppose it could have worked, but it wouldn't have been the best story. And so now the one I'm working on, I'm excited about because it's a much better version. And so again, I'm grateful that I took that time. And so for me, like planning stories takes me several months. Now, when I was writing Soundcheck, I planned that story in 8 months. So it took me 8 months to come up with the entire plan for that story. Now that is a long time, and I definitely don't recommend taking that long on every story. However, for me, the very first one that I was actually able to finish writing, publish, and get out there, that's what it needed. It needed those 8 months of time just marinating and practicing on things and trying different options. So you don't have to take that long, obviously. But the point is, don't come up with your idea and then tomorrow start writing the first draft, because that is actually doing a disservice to your story, because there's probably a lot more to it that could be there if you just gave yourself some time. So what I like to do now is give myself a deadline. So I'll say, okay, I'm going to be in the planning and development stages of this story until a certain date. So I'll put the date and say, like, let's say September 30th. I'm going to plan my story, work on it until then. And then when September 30th comes, I'm going to make the decision of, okay, am I in a place where I'm ready to start writing? I will never write if it's too soon. So if I feel like I don't have enough of the pieces of the story yet, if I haven't had enough of it come through, then I will continue the planning phase. Now, this is just me because I personally like to have my entire story plan figured out before I write it. That's just my style and what actually works for me. So I don't think you have to do it that way. If you find that you can plan and develop in a shorter period of time and then get started writing, that's totally fine. For me, it just never really worked like that. So I need that extra time. So what you're doing today and what I want you to do for the rest of the day today and even over the next couple of days is just explore the possibilities for your story. So whatever concept and plot you've come up with, don't accept that as this is it, I'm done. Unless for some reason you just feel like this is it. Like when I came up with the idea for the breakup coach, I was like, that's it, that's my concept. I never had to actually change anything on that because that was such a strong pull for me. But where I did have to make a lot of changes was in the plot, because originally I had a whole different plot coming up and it just didn't feel right, and I was sort of messing with different ideas. And so then I came up with the one I have now, which is this idea that this, she's been doing this for so long that she's got a lot of word of mouth, and now this, actor comes and tries to get her to help him break up with his girlfriend, but she says no because she doesn't work with guys, especially. That's one of her things, is she doesn't work with guys, but also she just doesn't support what he's doing and how he's doing it, so she doesn't want to be involved. And so he decides he's going to blackmail her to help him because he needs her help and he doesn't care that she doesn't want to do it. So he's like, I'm going to turn you, I'm going to tell everybody who you are, and basically her goal is to keep her identity a secret. So he's basically saying, I'm going to stop you from doing that. I'm going to tell everybody who you are. And so you got to help me. Otherwise I'm going to tell everybody. So it's sort of like okay, well, now we've got this extra thing happening. And then from there, I kept asking more questions. So then it was like, but what if he was being blackmailed too? Like maybe he's doing that to her because someone's doing it to him. And so it sort of wrapped into this idea of bringing that storyline in sort of like a full circle. And that idea was exciting to me. So then I said, okay, but what could be happening from there? And so by looking at all the potential little like what if questions, it actually brings to life a whole nother piece of the story. And really that's how I came up with the whole plot, was that I just kept asking questions. And so that's really what I'm wanting to encourage you to do today, is to just ask a lot of questions about your story, especially what if questions. What if this happened? What if he was being blackmailed? What if this person was extremely violent and was going to come after the protagonist now because he's involved with her? And what if, and you can really kind of go in any direction. So you can easily see how I could take this story, which sounds like a romance, and turn it into a thriller by bringing in this character who is going to try to kill her now because she wants to stop her from being with the musician. And so all these things that could happen, the actor. So all these things that could happen all came down to just asking questions and just playing around with the details and not just settling on the first idea or the first version that came to me, because there's always something deeper at, another level if you're willing to just give it some time. So that's my encouragement for you today, is to just explore, ask questions, ask what if questions especially, and just consider other options so that you know that when you do sit down to write your story, that you have the absolute best version that you could possibly have. And yeah, as you write it, you may come up with other ideas, and by the time you're finished, you may, in the revision phase, want to make changes to make it even better. And that's usually what happens, is that once it's written, you can kind of look at it as a bird's eye view, and you can say, okay, well, this is what I have right now, but wouldn't it work better if I did this? Or what if I twisted this? Or so you sort of just layer in all these other pieces, and it kind of just brings it to life. So in my example of the story that I'm working on right now with the character who gets invited to go on tour with her favorite musician, well, I'm like, okay, so she gets invited, but I wanted it to be something that really gave her a purpose besides just, she's traveling along with this musician. And so what I did was I invented a career for her that I would never have thought of if I hadn't taken the time to really come up with asking questions and pulling at the different details, is that she's going to be a music blogger. And that's the reason that he invites her on tour, is because he sees the connection between, she's a music blogger, so it makes sense that she would go on tour with this musician and, gives her something to write about, etc. So it's sort of bringing that idea into the story, and it never would have happened if I didn't ask questions, if I just had ran with that first idea that I had, and that was it. And so that's why I recommend taking the time to actually, just marinate on it and pull at the different ideas and see, a string that's hanging here and just tug on it and see where it goes. And maybe it's a dead end, or maybe you get somewhere where you're like, I don't really like that. Like, for example, I was saying, well, maybe the character, the girl that's blackmailing the actor who's now blackmailing my protagonist, maybe she's going to become violent and she's going to try to kill her. I don't know. Now, that was an option that I explored, but I decided not to go that route because I don't want to write a thriller. I don't want to write that kind of a story. I want to write a romance. That's what I write. So, hey, Rebecca, how are you? Oh my gosh, haven't talked to you in forever. Welcome to my live stream. I've been following you on Instagram, seeing all your pictures. So anyway, just a side note, Rebecca is one of my friends from New York who I haven't talked to in a really long time. So anyway, Rebecca Bruno, she is a musician. So if anyone is interested in good music, check her out. Anyway, so all is well, all is really well. Okay, but anyway, so I decided not to go that route with the story, but the whole point was that idea was, came out of the process of asking questions. So for me, it was really cool to just see that that was a possibility and then decide that I'm not going to use it, but it's just cool to have that option. And so I never would have thought of it if I wasn't pulling at the story and playing with different options and ideas. And then what I did decide to keep is the idea that she's blackmailing the guy. So she is going to be doing that. It's just not going to be in a violent way because that's not the kind of story I write. I write romance or chick lit, basically. So that really wouldn't work for me in my story. But you could see how you could take that idea and you could almost write a whole new story with it. So that's the whole point I'm trying to make here. And I'm going to wrap this up in a couple of minutes because I'm actually going to donate blood in a little while. So that's one of my ways I'm giving back to Houston right now is they're looking for donors of the type of blood that I have. So I'm going to donate some blood today to do that. But anyway, so I'm going to cut this so that I can go prep for that. But if anyone has questions right now, or if you want to share your concept premise to get some feedback, please put them in the comments now because I'm going to wrap this up in a couple of minutes and I'd be happy to answer them for you. So like I said, just don't settle with your story. Ask questions, be willing to play with ideas and options, and don't just hold tight to this one idea that you have. So I think a lot of times what happens for writers, especially if you're just writing your first story or you've just sort of gotten into the whole writing a novel thing, is that you get this great idea. Okay, and I did. This happened to me too. So in 2008, when I had that idea about the character who's going to chase this musician, that story was so personal to me. I loved it. I was super excited about it. It was one of the best ideas I'd had up to that point. But the problem was I was super attached to it. And so it took me a long time to finally let it go and realize that, you know what, the story isn't working the way it is. And I knew that it needed something else that I just couldn't bring to it at that point. And so I finally set it aside and worked on a different story. And then once I finished that story, funnily enough, the ideas I needed to fix the first story came to me. And so it's pretty cool to think, well, if I hadn't have done that, I might have just still been stuck all this time not having a story that worked. But the problem with a lot of writers is that because you've been working on something for so long, or you've just been very excited about a story idea for so long, that you actually get attached to it. And so what happens is that then you're not willing to see the other possibilities, and you're not willing to make changes because you're afraid that that's going to take away the stuff you actually like in the story, or that you actually, think is needed to be there. And so the attachment factor actually stops you from seeing other options. And that's why I say with a story, you want to just be very much, okay, this is the idea I started with, but I'm willing to see other possibilities. And like I said, maybe you'll go back to the original and decide it is the best version. But I think if you just explore and you ask questions and you just kind of play around with the idea, what ends up happening is that you find other ways to express that thing you were originally trying to do. So like for me, I wanted to show a story about the fact that just because somebody is a celebrity doesn't mean they're not an actual person. It doesn't mean that they're, better than anybody else or anything like that. And that's kind of what I was trying to play in that story, was that she's going to go chasing this musician and then she's just going to find out that he's just like everybody else. There's nothing special about him. He just happens to be famous and he happens to be, a great singer or whatever. But there's nothing about him that makes him better than anybody else. And so that was kind of the idea there. But it just wasn't coming to life in a real way that felt like true to life. And so the new version I'm doing actually does feel that way, because now I've got this musician in place, but I've got this girl who's chasing after him, but she's really not chasing him because he's inviting her to be part of it. So she's going as a music blogger, as somebody who loves music and who writes about music. And then she's going to learn, okay, he is like a real person because he has his own struggles that he's going through and the things that he wants to change about himself, or that he, doesn't like about his own life. So just sort of bringing in the realism of what it actually means to be a famous person. And so I feel like it's coming to life so much better now in this new version. And so I'm glad that I took the time to plan it more, to play with the ideas more, and to just stop being so attached to it, because that attachment that I had for so many years was stopping me from seeing these other possibilities of how I could bring it to life in a whole new way. So that is my spiel for you guys today, and I hope that it's helpful, and I hope that you can take what you've been working on for the last couple of days in this challenge and actually play with your ideas, ask what-if questions, and just see what else comes out of it. And I would love to see what you come up with, so if you want to share in the comments, or if you want to come to my free Facebook group, the 1% Writers Club, and share in there, I would love to see it. We would all love to see it, so definitely do that. Like I said, we've got 2 more days on this challenge, so we're going to be going through and actually refining what you've been coming up with and just making a final choice of this is what's going to be my story from here. Just something that you can now actually take and turn into your story plan. So you're going to have something to really run with and actually start writing. So for today, just have fun, explore possibilities, take out your notebook, write a bunch of questions, do a brain dump, do a mind map where you write in the center and draw out lines to all these other possibilities, and just look at what could potentially happen for your story. Doesn't mean you have to go with it. Doesn't mean you have to decide that this is the story now because you came up with the idea. It's just that you're playing with ideas. And as you start to see what other possibilities are out there, you'll definitely be like, oh, I like this one. And so you can sort of cherry pick. Well, I like this one, and I like this one, and this one, but I don't like this one, so I'm not going to use that, but I'm going to use this instead. And you kind of just get all these just outside cool factors that you wouldn't have had if you just ran with that first story, or if you were so attached to it that you weren't willing to see it for what it is and, just keep it in this little box here. So that's what I've got for you guys today. Now, some of you were asking about the workshop, so I'm just going to tell you about that really quick, and then I'm going to go. So I am running a workshop that starts on September 11th. We are going for 8 weeks. It's called Write Your Damn Novel Nano Edition. So I run a workshop twice a year called Write Your Damn Novel. I did the very first version in January. So this is my 7th year doing a story planning workshop for Nano. So really excited about this version of it. This is probably the best one I've ever done, and I'm just pumped to get it out there. And so basically what we're doing for the course of the 8 weeks is we are going to take the idea that you have and we are going to flesh out an entire story plan. So we're going to go concept and plot. We're going to actually come up with your theme. We're going to develop your character arc and your protagonist and your antagonist, the inner demon that he has. We're going to come up with the goals for the story. And we sort of worked on some of this right now, but we're going to go deeper on all of it in this workshop. And then we're going to come up with your actual story structure, so figuring out your plot points. And then we're actually going to develop your scenes. So you're going to figure out what scenes do you need to connect your plot points to bring the rest of the story to life. And by the time the workshop is over, you're going to have a story plan that you can use for NaNoWriMo, if you're doing NaNoWriMo this year, to actually sit down and start writing your draft. And the cool thing is, because this is a Nano edition of the workshop, I'm actually giving you support during Nano. So you're going to be able to check in with the group and actually get feedback on what you're doing, camaraderie, support each other, cheerleading, whatever you need to keep going and actually get your draft finished, you're going to get that in this workshop. So it's basically a start to finish, idea to draft workshop, using Nano as a motivator to actually write the draft. And then, of course, the 8 weeks of story planning is going to be all just working on the actual pieces of your story that are going to make it come to life so you can write it as a first draft. And let's see what else. So there's a Facebook group, private Facebook group that everyone gets to be part of. So you'll get to interact with me, with all the people taking the workshop. We're going to have just all different, like I said, once a week you're going to get content that's going to give you a lesson and then assignment for each week. So each assignment is going to build on the next one, so that by the time you get to the end, you've got your story plan, your story roadmap that you can use now to write your first draft. You get support from me the entire time, so you can ask questions, you can post stuff for feedback. I'm completely there to support you and help you through this process. This is the process that I use for my own stories, that I teach to my private clients and I teach in my workshops. And you can check out all of the details about this workshop by going to jenniferblanchard.net/nano edition, so NaNo edition. And right now you can get $100 off. So we're in early bird of the workshop. So the actual launch phase of the workshop, the cart opening, starts Monday. So I'm doing an early bird right now where you can get $100 off the full price if you sign up by Sunday. I actually just extended it. It was supposed to be today, but I'm going to do it till Sunday because I haven't had enough time to sort of tell everybody about it. So if you are interested and you want to sign up this weekend, you can get $100 off. When you sign up, you go to the sales page, it will show you the price. The price that's on the sales page is actually the full price. So you're going to, when you click the cart button, you're going to get $100 off of that price. There will be a payment plan for the workshop, but it's not coming out until Thursday. So the full pay in full is basically because you get the discount, or there's going to be special bonuses happening next week. And then the payment plan will open on next Thursday. So if you do want a payment plan, there's going to be a really great payment plan that makes it easy for you to join us for this workshop. So you can learn about all of this and what we're covering in the workshop and everything else you need to know by going to jenniferblanchard.net/nano edition. And if you have any questions or are on the fence and just need to know whether this is a good fit for you, just please hit me up on this page here on my Facebook page or in my Facebook group, and I'm happy to help you decide if this is the right workshop for you. So I will catch you guys tomorrow for our next live stream in the free challenge series. And hopefully you're going to come up with some really great questions today that are going to help you to flesh out your plot more. And I can't wait to see what you come up with. See you tomorrow.